So, hi, everyone. Hi, Laura. I am so excited to have you here today. We are going to talk all about healing after divorce. So, before we get started, before we get into it, I'm just going to ask you to share with everyone watching, a little
Yes.
bit about who you are, what's your story, what do you do, and kind of what led you down this path to working with women after divorce.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Laura. Hello. Thank you for having me. I
No
really
problem.
appreciate that. So I was married for 32 years and I have three grown children. And I used to be a speech therapist. And then in 2020, I decided to make a career change because 2020. And really, we had a couple of deaths in the family. And so I just decided to make kind of a life change. It was, especially during the pandemic and all that. And during that time, I decided that I wanted to get a divorce because I think I have figured out after that my ex is a narcissist. I started to kind of understand. I felt like something was wrong, and I had been doing therapy, and so I decided to. I was like starting to figure out there's something wrong. It's not just like he's a jerk. Like he's abusing me. You know what I mean? And so I decided to get a divorce. I never thought I would do that. And from there, I've always had a heart to work with women and help women. I'm a big encourager. I'm always trying to not just find the bright side because I can look at the bad side too, but I want to help women to heal on their journey as well. I feel like we can all work with, or we can all learn from each other. I'm no expert. I'm just 13 months out from my divorce, but I'm further along than some friends that are just
Yeah.
starting their journey. And maybe, other people are further along. They can help me. And so I just decided I wanted to help women. I didn't know what that looked like. And was it coaching? What was it? And this podcast kind of, I like to talk. And so and it was so funny because during therapy, I said, oh, no one's ever listened to me and I'm going to start a podcast, you know?
Nice. Hey, just
So
to
it's
clarify, did you guys do couples therapy or you did individual therapy? What did that
yes,
look like? The
both. Yeah. So
both.
I've been doing individual therapy off and on for the last 7 years intensively because we've had some major life things happening. And we did couples counseling, but the one thing that happens in couples counseling, if you are with a person who I'm going to call him a narcissist, even though he's not diagnosed that way, he has the tendencies. It doesn't work because they don't think they have anything wrong, and also it all becomes your fault. And so going to counseling was just a way for him to show that something was going on with me. And so for me, what's worked the best is individual counseling to really
Mhm.
heal what the things that I thought were going on. I did have other things going on because we had some major life trauma happening. And so, yeah, so individual and couples counseling to try and save my marriage, and did so many other things. We did retreats, I did Bible studies, I prayed, I had friends praying, we did lots of things together as a couple, and
Yeah.
it just nothing was sticking because not both of us were not invested. So that was the key in that.
Yeah, that was sounds like it was a long relationship. Did you say over 30 years you guys were together
We
and
were
that
together 33, we were married 32. We were young. We were so young when we got married, and so you don't even have a full functioning brain at that point. We were 23 and 22 when we got married. And so, you become different people, which that doesn't matter necessarily because people
yeah.
can learn and grow, and you can be married young and that's okay. But when one person or both people are growing, well, you're going to grow regardless. You're going to grow. And when you grow, but not both people aren't invested in the growth or in the changes, and the changes become a problem, then that was what was not working for us.
Yeah, and sounds like you guys tried and everything. I'm curious, at
Yes.
what point during the relationship did you start noticing kind of these narcissistic tendencies? And I want to talk more about this whole
Okay.
narcissist topic, but I'm curious to know, let's dig a bit more into your
Yeah.
story if you don't mind
Yeah.
sharing.
Absolutely not. So I actually only realized we've been divorced about 13 months, and I only realized it in the last couple of years.
Wow.
I had never heard actually, I probably have heard the word gaslighting and I probably have heard the word narcissism, but I didn't know what it meant. I really just thought my husband was kind of a jerk, and like, why didn't he, like, why wasn't he trying to fix these things? And every time he would blame me, and because I had such a low self-esteem and self-worth, that every time he would blame me, I would believe it. And that's the hard part, is that it's such an incremental thing. It took 33 years to get there.
Yeah.
Well, when I figured out the last year or so of our marriage, I'm like, this is what you're doing to me. Okay, well, narcissists don't like to be called out. So what happened then was he started finding ways for me to want to leave. It's a pattern that they do. There's a very strategic pattern. Thinking back now, being in even more therapy and recovering for the last year and a half, or the last year, I probably can look back and see red flags starting at the beginning, maybe even on our honeymoon or before.
Oh yeah, that early, right?
Yes, because it's like you get clarity and you're like, wow, this has been going on for a while.
Yeah. How would you define a narcissist? Like, how do you define kind of that term to women, and based on what you've experienced?
Well, okay, so a narcissist is born out of emotional neglect. And so that happens, unfortunately, in childhood. And so they get stunted in that area. Usually it's emotionally neglectful mother, but that's not necessarily always the case. But they're born out of emotional neglect. They have a sense of self-importance. They're arrogant. They have a lack of empathy. They must be admired. Everything has to be their way. Everything that you're doing is wrong. So it's everything is about their own gain. Nothing is about a team effort, even though that's what they're saying. And so then you're going to find that these kind of people are also lying, because if you're catching them in lies, because mine would say, you're just not a team player. And we should be a team. And I'd be like, okay, what am I doing that's not a team player? And then he wouldn't be a team player. He'd be all out for himself. He wouldn't even consider me. He used to only clean like half his bathroom. Like our bathroom was really big and he'd clean his half.
Oh, wow.
It's just like that. It's like, it's only, and all of this is part of they want to make sure you understand that they're better than you are. And I know it's weird. Like, who would think that? I'd be like, why? You didn't clean my side of the bathroom? Like, who does that? But it's all part of the process of devaluing you. Unfortunately, it's sad, but that's what it is.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said earlier kind of the whole idea of like both people wanting to make the commitment to fix things, because I think one of the things now that we're hearing more and more of this word narcissism, and I mean that's something I've just researched
Right.
in more recent years, because I try to stay away from those terms, but I think it can be useful to label things so that we can bring things into awareness and understand things. But I also realized, just kind of in my work, in my experience, sometimes in the relationship that we can see narcissistic tendencies, but there's a difference when the person is a narcissist too. And I think that might play off the whole idea of, you were saying, the willingness to work on things. How do you feel about that statement?
Well, yes. And I was actually talking to somebody about this who wanted a label, right? And the thing is that, look, it's an oxymoron that a diagnosed narcissist, because if they are truly a narcissist where they could be, diagnosed by a psychologist, they're not going anywhere near anyone who is going to diagnose them with anything. It's very minimal. But the label helps in regard to how you then interact with these people. So that's why, to me, I don't have to say, I say he's a narcissist just for ease of explanation. He just has all the tendencies. I mean, he's just exactly like textbook to me, but that doesn't mean he's been diagnosed that. So I just use that because it's an easy way for me. I can actually look at the definition. I can look at his patterns and what they do, and then know this is how to deal with it. This is how I can work with it. It helps me in my journey, because I don't want to take it all personally. What he's doing, it's about them, not us.
And it's so easy to take it personally, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah. When someone for me, I was replaced immediately.
Oh,
You know what I
wow.
mean? It's like, so I don't want to take that personally. That's why it's so important to continue to work on your self-esteem and your self-worth.
Yeah.
I think that's important anyway, but that's why it's so important to work on that. That's the biggest thing. And learning healthy boundaries, but that's the ultimate self-love, is learning healthy boundaries.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if you can recall some of those earlier on red flags that you had in a relationship, just to help women who are maybe in a situation right now that they're not sure if it's
Right.
narcissism or not. What are some of these, maybe those subtle red flag
Right.
signs you saw at the beginning but didn't catch
Right.
on to, that can kind of help women who might be in a similar situation but don't know it yet?
Well, and I have a few in front of me, so that's why I'll be reaching out to my computer.
Nice.
But some of the things are like they attack they attack your self-worth, and they often criticize you. Like, everything is a criticism. I wouldn't have done it that way. That was his favorite statement. It didn't matter what it was. I wouldn't have done it that way, because there's a pattern of what we're going to call abuse, because it is considered emotional abuse. There's a pattern of abuse, and one of the patterns, and where you will start seeing red flags, is devaluing. And what devaluing does, by criticizing you, by lying to you, by pushing as far as they can. And so they will do that by lying to you. And if you believe them, then they know, aha, she believed me, I'm going to do it again. And I'm just using men and women just as an example. Women can be narcissists as well, but I'm just going from my experience. So, and then also any kind of control. So if they isolate you from your friends, they tell you, I don't really like that friend for you. She's like really rude or whatever. I remember back to friends that I had, and he would tell me, I don't really like her for you. Now, in hindsight, I think back, because all this stuff starts coming back to me, like all
Yeah.
these years, and I remember some of the friends he would say that about they were very strong women. And
Mm.
so they don't like you around strong women, where you might actually start being strong yourself,
Yep.
though they're attracted to strong women. So take it as a compliment. If you are in this kind of a relationship, it's actually a compliment, because you're a strong woman. And since they are emotionally stunted, they want to mirror a strong person so they can learn how to be strong themselves. So, I take it as a compliment, even though it's kind of demented.
Well, that's interesting. Can we just dig in deeper? Put a
Sure.
note, a placeholder where you were in your
Yep.
your list there.
Yep.
But this is fascinating, right? This whole
Yeah.
idea that they would be attracted to stronger women, because you
Yes.
would think that as strong women, we wouldn't succumb to that.
Right.
What are your thoughts? How do you explain kind of almost that discrepancy?
Yeah, I know. And it's so interesting, right? Because it's when people said, look, I would never let that happen to me. Look,
Yeah.
this kind of abuse is so incremental. They call it the death by 1,000 cuts.
Mhm.
It's so incremental that you don't even know it's happening. And then by the time you realize it's happening, you might be 33 years in, like me.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's happening. You just might be like, well, that was rude. And they might, every once in a while, okay, don't hold your breath, they might apologize, or they might be like, you're too sensitive. So, but the thing is that they are attracted to to strong women, but that doesn't mean we may notice it, because I was a strong woman, but I also had a deep need and deep not childhood. Well, I will call it childhood trauma. I had a deep need to be loved. Okay. That's left over from childhood. Okay. So I can be both. I can be a strong person and still have this need. And that was they find us.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
They almost
find us,
prey
but the
on us.
strength, yes, exactly. And the strength is, then they have someone to model, like, oh, well, like, I remember my ex never gave money to charity or anything like that. And he learned how to do those things from me. He learned how to, because they need to learn how to build a facade of a great person. So he learned how to give money to charity and help the homeless, and it looks great. So now everyone loves him, kind of thing. That's what they're working on. They're not going to work on internal. They're going to work on the facade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez.
So I know I kind of jumped in there. So what would be,
Yep.
because my next question was all about kind of the emotional abuse part of it, but I feel like we're kind of touching on both, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. Well, and so, so I know I often heard like, you don't share like your deep, dark feelings with me or whatever. And so when you do, they may say like, oh, thank you for sharing that. But then later they might use it against you,
Wow.
or they might share it in inappropriate times, like for me at a party, like
Mhm.
things like that. And what it does is it just is another way to like, I remember walking away, and I talk about this on my podcast. I remember walking away from him going, oh my God, and asking him, please don't share like any of our personal business with strangers. And he did it. And so what it showed, and then when I said, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. He's like, I can't believe how rude you were. You were rude to those guests at the party. So they turn it around to you. And it's just all part of the abuse. They know what they're doing. It's just all part of the abuse. It's really like you'd think that they could like get it together and be nice, but because they have a disorder, I'm not diagnosing anybody, but if they have this disorder, then they're not thinking clearly. It's only about them. It's all, they want to look better and my wife is crazy kind of thing. And very much the shutting down conversations. You're not allowed to talk. What you think is unimportant. I don't know how many times I had conversations. He would love to debate. I'd be in a setting with other people who thought the way I did. And I'd say, yeah, that's really interesting. I do think that way as well. And he would attack me, even though so-and-so just said the same thing. It's
Hmm.
just it's just another way to devalue you. And then gaslighting, which just a way to make you feel like you're crazy. That's really a common theme with people who have come out of these kind of relationships, is that they felt crazy. I really felt crazy at the end, where I wanted to check myself into like a mental facility to see like why I was feeling this way. And it's because everything was, that didn't happen that way. That's not what I said. Doesn't matter if you have a video, if you have text messages or anything like that. You're crazy. You're overreacting.
Hmm.
That's not what happened. And everything is invalidating. Everything is invalidating. And so, I mean, there's many crossing boundaries, your partner controlling your activities, your conversations, checking the phone bill to see who you're calling. And then they love to isolate you again away from friends or family because they're not good for you, even family. No,
Hmm.
I don't like that person coming, like your own mother or something. I don't like them coming around. So it's just things like that. Any way that you're feeling controlled,
Yeah.
that's not safe. It's not good. It's not a
Mhm.
partnership, really.
Yeah. So you endured this for a very long time. What would
Yeah.
you say ultimately led? Yeah, let's honor that for a second.
I'm okay now. Cheers.
Yeah. But that's because you're a strong person. You're a strong woman. There you go.
Well, I mean, we don't have to be strong. We just have to know our self-worth, and that's what I was working on.
Right. In
And
therapy.
yes, and that's what I was working on in therapy. And really, because I was a person who was like, you'd see those people that are walking around happy all the time. Like, how do you do that? I literally was like, I don't understand. How do people just walk around happy? Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? I literally got curious and was like, how do you just be happy? And so that's when I started going to therapy, and they're like, yeah, you can just be happy in the world. And I was like, how does that work? So I started doing therapy because I used to be very angry, but you have to understand that that was part of the abuse. It was reactive abuse. So reactive abuse is I may abuse, or I may become an angry person because of the way I was being abused. And so it's not an excuse. I've apologized to my children for being a yelly, screamy mom and all those things. But it's part of the abuse to make you look like you are a terrible person. You're a yeller, you're a screamer and all this. But it's amazing how I'm not an angry person anymore.
Nice. And that's who you truly are now. You're back
Without
to,
somebody poking the bear,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it just got to the point. So there's a thing that's called the reverse discard, which when they are really done with you, like he stopped talking to me, he would be like, hey, I'm going out. Bye. I'd be like, do I exist anymore? He wouldn't even barely acknowledge my existence because he was done with me. But the
Mm.
thing with a narcissist is they will never leave because they don't want to look like the bad guy, because their whole thing is about the facade.
Yeah.
And so we were sitting on the couch. It was a Saturday. We were having a fight because it was a Saturday. That's what we did. And he said, he said, you know, if this is the way our life is going to be, you need to tell me you're done. And I said, I have to tell you I'm done. I was like, but that's just an excuse, because he would never say, I want a divorce. He would never say that. So
Right.
I was sitting there and he said, do you think we could really work this out? And I started to talk mid-sentence. I remembered my therapist said, you've been very clear with him what you need from him. And he's either unwilling or unable at this point. And we both were like, he's unwilling, because it's sad. Like, it was down to my basic wants and needs, like acknowledge my existence. That's not a life. That's not a life.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, I'm done. And I stood up and I didn't talk to him for 2 days. And I felt like so scared, but it was so freeing. And he didn't fight for me. He really didn't. He didn't, because I know lots of stuff now, but he didn't. He had somebody waiting. So he had to hurry up and get to her. But that's the funny thing is, I said, why would he not just tell me he wants a divorce? And my therapist said, no, God, he'll never tell you. They don't ever say it. They will wait for you to say it. So I did.
The reverse discard.
And it's really sad. And I never thought I would be in this place of being divorced. But when it takes two to tango, and I can walk out of my marriage knowing that I did everything that I should have done. I tried and tried and tried. And it takes two. It really does. So,
yeah. So I was going to ask if there's something that ultimately led to it, but it sounds like you were saying it was something a bit more progressive. And as you did the work in therapy and kind of rediscovering who you are, and that's kind of what brought you that clarity eventually in order to be able to stand up and say that.
Well, especially since we were in marriage counseling one more time. Like, we had been in marriage counseling so many times. We were in marriage counseling one more time, and he wasn't doing anything. In fact, I even said, because I was just getting to the point where I was like, I don't feel like I have anything to lose. And I said to her, I go, he doesn't do anything you ask him to do. He hasn't done any of the homework. He doesn't change. He hasn't done anything differently. But in marriage counseling, he would be like, yeah, we're going to do the work, and, everything's going to be great. Yeah. And he would literally not do one thing. But that's why marriage counseling sometimes is really hard. He also gaslit me in marriage counseling, saying Laura should probably go on meds. Something's wrong with her. And I think back and I remember going, yeah, I'm going crazy somehow. But that's what he was doing to me. But there was just enough glimmer of hope from my other therapist, because it's not the same therapist. I don't recommend that you see a marriage counselor and then see them individually. That's my personal opinion. I feel like you need a separate individual counselor, because then it's another point of view entirely. And working with her, I felt really safe. And, she helped me process everything that was going on and why he wasn't doing it. And she said, you keep telling him. You have to realize, is he unwilling or unable? Because some people are unable, right? Maybe if they don't have I don't know, maybe they're not intelligent enough to figure it out. But no, this was not unable. This was unwilling. So yeah, it was very progressive. And I saw that marriage counseling wasn't going to do anything, and he wasn't willing to change. Yeah. And he also wasn't willing to change when I asked him to stop with women, which is another common thing. And I have asked repeatedly. He would say yes, excuse me, and he wouldn't stop. So you have to consider when you're asking for something and they say, yeah, I'll stop that. I promise I'll do that. You're important to me. And then they don't stop it, whatever it may be, whatever it is you're asking, and they don't, you have to consider that as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a big sign.
Yeah.
I want to switch over the conversation a little bit to kind of the aftermath about healing after a narcissistic relationship, and kind of maybe what are some of the things that you've noticed for yourself, some of the things you've done, like what would you really what do you want to highlight for women?
Well, for me, for sure, therapy. I've continued with therapy. And then if it's truly something like emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, whatever it is for you, really find specific information or find a therapist that can help you work with that specifically. Because healing from this kind of abuse, this kind of a marriage, I didn't just have irreconcilable differences. I had, mind games and all these things for years. And so to understand how it's going to take me to heal, what it's going to take me to heal is different than, I think, maybe just leaving a marriage where you just grew apart, which actually that's what I thought was happening until I found out that he actually had someone on the side, the same girl that's always been there, and the one I asked him to stop seeing a million times. And so now when I found that out, I felt like everything started to come to light. And so then I knew how to heal, which was I can't, well, you can feel however you want, but but knowing that they do certain things for a reason. So he didn't replace me because I'm not worth anything. Okay. He replaced me because he can't be alone. So there's a difference, right? I don't want to go down the road of I'm not worthy, I'm a terrible person, I'm horrible. No, I know because I've been working on my self-worth. I'm a great person. I'm a kind person. I, value to society, and I help women, etc. They can't be alone. And so it's just another way to heal. So you target, someone like there's a trauma-informed therapists, things like that you can work on where they can help you heal specifically. And the other thing for me was journaling. That was really important for me. I love to journal, and no one's going to read it, and just throw up on the page and just write every thought, get it out of your body. Don't hold it in, cry about it. I would just sit there and just cry about it and write it all out. I hate him and I can't believe he did this. And it's hard, but it's important. It's important. And of course, continue to love yourself. I wrote beautiful things all over my mirror with sticky notes, things that
nice.
of value of myself, even if you don't believe it. Okay. Even if not, I was not discarded. No, not that. I have value. Don't go to the I am not. Okay. Because your brain doesn't know how to read that. You have to say, I have value. I'm lovely. I'm beautiful. Whatever it is you want to say, just write it. Just write it. If he told you you were ugly, write that you're beautiful. So that way you can start healing that part of you that is damaged. So,
yeah, I think that's so powerful. Just writing everything, just really releasing it from the body is going to make such a difference in terms of the healing. Otherwise, you just leave it inside. It just makes you even more sensitive. Yes. And even like when you were saying, even write it, even if you don't believe it, when you've been immersed in something, it's hard to not believe something. It's not because it's true, it's because you were immersed in it for maybe 33 years. Whereas part of your work is going to be to re-immerse yourself in the truth.
And I think what you just said was so important. Just because he said it or just because you heard it does not make it true. That is for everything, even in relationships. If somebody says you're difficult, that doesn't mean that's true. You might be crossing a boundary with them, or they might not like the way you're behaving, whatever. But that whatever is said about you, I always say what other people think of me is none of my business. Yeah. Okay. Because we have to be careful. I thought that was really good. I'll have to remember the way you said that, because it's so true. Just because it's uttered into this world doesn't mean that it's true. So just be really careful what you take in. Get some trusted friends around you if you're, because therapy is once a month for me at this point. It was once a week, but now I can go once a month. But I have trusted friends who are like, no, Laura, you're a kind person. No, don't believe that. Just because he said it doesn't mean it's true, because people are going to talk about you. And I thank God that I have grown children, because he's telling people that I gave up on the marriage, and my kids go, okay, Dad, whatever helps you sleep at night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to be ready for the things that are going to be said about you that you can't. I just go, whatever you want to believe. That's not, I know it's not true, but that takes a lot of work. You got to work on yourself.
Yeah. It sounds simple, but it's not easy.
Right. It doesn't feel simple at the beginning. That's for sure. I mean, I was already working on that, but no. You have to keep doing the work. You have to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Hey, do you have any final words of advice for the ladies who are listening today? Maybe a powerful key takeaway, something
Sure.
people in this situation can maybe start doing now?
Well, I just don't stop doing the work. Just keep, and if you only want to work on one thing, start working on healthy boundaries and self-love, which are really going to be one and the same. And so that's going to look like loving yourself, even though this terrible thing has happened to you. Because like we were saying, even though things are being said about you or whatever happened, doesn't mean that it's true. And so keep working on being the great person that you are. And if you don't think you're a great person, start working on it. You know what I mean? Like make those changes, but keep working on that. Don't stop doing the work. Don't go, I feel pretty good today, I'm going to stop. No, just keep going.
Yeah.
Because if you were in, like I was for 33 years, there's a trauma bond. Okay. I'm bonded, unfortunately, by trauma, because it's so confusing in my brain how much I don't like him. But then also my brain is like, but didn't we marry him? So
Yeah.
it's confusing. And so I would miss him. It takes a long time to heal. Give yourself grace. It takes a long time to heal.
Yes, that's amazing. So powerful. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was such an important talk. And I'm sure the women listening are really interested in where they can find you after and what you have going on. I know you referenced the podcast and
Yes.
everything. I'll put some links below, but if you want to remind people where they can find you online.
Sure. I'm at that's where I'm at podcast.com, and you'll find me by that's where I'm at podcast all over everything on social media.
So simple, so easy.
It is. I wanted to make it very easy for everybody to find me. Go to the website, you'll find everything.
Awesome. Thanks again. This was so great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.